Hey YouTube, welcome back. Donnie here. It's been a little while since I had my last video posted, so I wanted to get back on and do a new video for everyone. But honestly, this video is mostly for myself. My dad would be 82 years old this month in August of 2024. We lost him a little over 11 years ago, so he's been gone 11 years. And just thinking through, you know, his birthday this month and everything, and tying it back to my collection, I realized that there's a lot of ways that he impacted how I collect and my collection. So I wanted to make this video to kind of go over that, starting from the very first day when I first got it started in cards, all the way up through kind of today. Go over some neat stories, little bits and pieces of my collection, share it with y'all. Maybe a little bit of a long video, maybe a lot of stops and starts. I've kind of broke down a couple times just kind of planning out this video already. But I want to share it, and I perfectly understand if it's not your cup of tea and you bail out here or shortly after we start. But for those of you who stick around through the whole video, I appreciate it. Kudos to you. But now let's get right into it. So my dad's impact on my collecting start all the way back from the very first pack of cards I opened. I'm going to have a video kind of recreating that first experience with cards at some point, so check back periodically, and hopefully I'll have that video up here later this year. But for right now, the short version of it is we were visiting my grandparents at the time, and we were in a drugstore and going to check out, and I saw some packs of baseball cards. I had no idea what they were, so I asked my dad, hey, what are these? He said, they're baseball cards, you collect them. And so I asked him if we could get a couple packs, my brother and I, and he said sure. And so we came home with a few packs of cards, and if I remember right, they were 1985 Fleer cello packs. And so I started opening them up at my grandparents' house, sitting on the floor. I think my dad and my grandparents were sitting in the living room watching TV, maybe a baseball game or some golf or something like that on TV. And of course, I didn't know anything about the players, didn't know anything about the teams, very little about baseball itself. And I started flipping through the cards, and I get a stack of them, and I asked my dad, well, who are the good players? And he said, well, give me your cards, let me look. So I hand him the stack of cards, and it's literally like this. So he's flipping through the cards, these 1985 Fleer cards, looking at the players, going through, checking them out. Any that he recognized, he'd say, oh, yep, I know him or don't know him or whatever. And just, flipping through the cards. And he comes to this card. He says something along these lines, well, Darryl Strawberry's pretty good. And from that day on, Darryl Strawberry became my favorite player. So I started collecting Darryl Strawberry. I have a binder of his cards now. I don't know how many different ones I have, but several. I wouldn't call myself necessarily a super collector, but he was definitely my favorite player growing up. And so, day one of card collecting, I found my favorite player simply because my dad pointed out Darryl Strawberry and a stack of 1985 Fleer cards. So since that time, I've picked up his Topps Traded rookie card from '83 and his '84 Topps card, and the Nestle version of '84 Topps, and of course '84 Don Russ, one of my favorite sets ever, as well as a bunch of his other cards, like I said, that I have in my binder of his. And Strawberry was my favorite player for many years. When he started getting in all the off-field and trouble and that kind of stuff. You know, my heart was kind of broken. So I ended up taking all of my Strawberry cards and relegating them to a binder with all the other kind of bad boys and, you know, PED users and that kind of stuff, and put it away and stopped collecting them. You know, didn't really want to have anything to do with them. But it looks like he's turned around his life last decade or more. He's now a minister, goes around preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, which we need more of. So now I'm back to, you know, picking up his cards when I see them. I actually have a letter written to him that I need to get off in the mail, just kind of telling him, comparing his path that he went through with, you know, being in baseball, then getting in trouble and hitting rock bottom, and then, you know, turning his life around and turning towards God to do that, and kind of similar types of kind of paths that mine took, although not nearly as rock bottom as he may have got to, but certainly going from a non-believer to a Christian. So anyway, so now I have a letter I need to write him or send off to him that I have written already. Hopefully he gets it, responds. Someday I'll pick up his autograph at a baseball card show. Hopefully I have not met him in person or got his autograph yet. Anyway, so that's very first experience with baseball cards, all brought about by my dad, buying my brother and I a couple packs of baseball cards in 1985. Now the next way that my dad impacted my collecting was through his favorite player. And I remember years ago asking him who his favorite player was, and he said Mickey Vernon. And I didn't really know much about Mickey Vernon, but I knew that was my dad's favorite player. My dad was born in northern Ohio, up in Mansfield, Ohio. So I think he was probably, as a real young kid, an Indians fan. And Mickey Vernon did play for a couple years for the Indians, but mostly he played for the Senators. And then after he finished his playing days, he went on to be a manager, also for the Senators. But Mickey Vernon played from 1939 to 1960, with a couple years in 1944 and 45 when he was in the military with World War II. And he was a pretty solid player. He has a 286 lifetime batting average, almost 2,500 hits, 172 home runs, OPS plus of 116. So he was a solid player. Played for a long time. Again, mostly with the Washington Senators, but also a few stints with Cleveland and Boston, a couple other teams in there too. So because he was my dad's favorite player, I started collecting him. So I'd go to card shows or card shops or whatever. When I'd see a Mickey Vernon card that I didn't have, I'd pick it up. So here are the Mickey Vernon cards in my collection now, solely because he was my dad's favorite player. There's 1963 Topps with him as the manager of the Senators. And 62, again, as manager with the Washington Senators. I think this is 61 Topps here. I'm going to skip a few years and have 1957 Topps here with him playing first base. And then I have 1955 Bowman. And 1954 Bowman. And then 1952 Topps. This is a beautiful card. I mean, really nice condition. I think I have a second one of these upstairs in my dupes box, but this one's the one that's I'm keeping in my PC. And then 1951 Bowman as well. So at some point I'll finish the Mickey Vernon run, but that was I wouldn't have these cards if it wasn't for my dad just telling me who his favorite player was. So it's just kind of interesting that how your collection, little turns and twists it takes for random or seemingly random reasons. And that's one here from my dad, just kind of passing when I asked him who his favorite player was. So there you have that. So as a kid, my dad moved to Florida with his family after my grandfather was injured in an accident at the service station that he owned. So they moved down to the St. Pete Beach area, and my grandparents started a couple of businesses down there over the course of several years. And my dad spent a lot of time there at St. Pete Beach hanging out, and of course close by was a lot of the spring training camps of some of the major league teams. I think the Yankees were down there close by, because I remember him telling me stories about him and his friends. I think they were riding their bicycles over to the spring training camps and going to, hang out at the fence line and that kind of stuff, watch the players. So I remember him telling me, him going to see, Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and those guys at spring training down there. But he also told me stories about a player that he knew from that area, and that's Hal Lanier. So Hal Lanier got started back in the mid-'60s in the major leagues, and then went on to have a managing career. And because it was someone that my dad was familiar with, I started collecting his cards too. And so I have 89 tops here, him as a manager for the Astros, and then my 86 tops also as a manager for the Astros. Then I have some of his playing dates cards as well. So here's a 68 tops with the Giants. He was a shortstop. And then the 67 top or 66 tops combo card with him and Dick Schofield, and this is the tops version. And then I also picked up in the last year or so Venezuela version of that. And then of course his rookie card in 1965 tops. So Hal Lanier and my dad were approximately the same age. Says, let's see. Yeah, Hal was born in July of 42. My dad was born in August of 42. And they grew up basically in the same town in Florida, going through high school and stuff. So I have a letter written to Mr. Lanier as well that I need to get sent off. I'm going to send his rookie card, ask him to autograph that. So hopefully I'll get that mailed off and he returns that autographed, and I'll have another video on that through the mail autograph that I'll send to him. But anyway, I collect Hal Lanier purely because of my dad's connection to him growing up. And not only that, but Hal Lanier's dad, Max Lanier, also played in majors, and so I picked up a few of his cards too. So here's his 52 tops card. It's a beautiful card. Just gorgeous color and stuff in that one. And then also Max's 51 Bowman here that I have. So just another, I guess, example of how my dad impacted my collecting. Hey, I forgot to mention when I was talking about Mickey Vernon, I also got this Mickey Vernon autograph card. I think I got it through a trade through Vintage Card Traders online trading group. But again, I would not have had a Mickey Vernon autograph or or any of his cards if it wasn't, didn't have that connection to my dad. So it's just one more example of how he's impacted my collecting. And growing up as a kid, my dad used to tell me stories of his cards and stuff that he remembered having. His mom threw out all of his cards in one of their moves, I guess while he was at college or something like that. And so I never saw any of those cards, but he used to tell me stories. And he said he distinctly remembered having multiple Mickey Mantle cards, early 50s Mickey Mantle, so rookie cards, either the 51 Bowman or the first Topps card, 52 Topps cards, multiples of each of those. And so I couldn't imagine, having those cards. And so when I was a kid, Mickey Mantle quickly became one of my favorite vintage players. And one day I was probably, I don't know, 12 or 13 years old maybe, and I decided I wanted to get a Mickey Mantle card. So I talked my dad into taking me down to the local card shop, Nostalgia World on Summer Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee. And they had several Mantle cards there to choose from, some certainly out of my price range, obviously. But they had at least one, that was in my price range. And previously my dad had bought me a stack of 1965 Topps cards at a card show. And so when I saw this one, I pretty much knew it was the one for me. And it's the 1965 Topps Mantle. Bought it for $33 back around probably 1987, something like that, maybe 88. But I paid for it myself, picked it out myself. Dad was obviously there when I got it. Became a kind of a minor celebrity amongst the local neighborhood kids, because I was the only one that had a Mantle card, and certainly the only one that had bought one himself. So that was kind of cool. But, my dad was excited for me because Mantle was one of his favorite players. Kind of idolized him. And so I have that Mantle card because my dad getting me into 65 Topps, and then, talking, sharing stories and stuff about Mantle and him going to see spring training things down in Florida with the Yankees. And so that continues on. All my early card show experiences, most of them were my dad taking me to the card show. And so I would go and get autographs at some of them, go buy cards, obviously, sometimes boxes, wax boxes, that kind of stuff to open at home. Sometimes, single vintage cards here and there. And all that was, influenced by my dad. The very first autograph I ever got, Lou Brock was signing, and this was shortly after he made it to the Hall of Fame, probably a couple years at most. And I went to the card show. My dad took me, and I wanted to get a card because I didn't have a Lou Brock card, but I wanted to get a card for him to autograph. And so my dad and I walked around looking at cards, and of course many of the dealers were trying to convince me not to get a card signed. That was just, heresy back then. But I really wanted to get a card signed because I love baseball cards and wanted to get that autographed. So finally found one dealer that had some affordable late Lou Brock playing days cards, and I picked out this 1978 Topps card and waited in line. Not very long. It was at a Marriott Hotel, the card show, so it wasn't a huge show. But he was signing there, waited in line with my dad, went up, and Mr. Brock, was talking to me, asking who my favorite team was, which was the Mets at the time because Darryl Strawberry was my favorite player. And, of course, in '86, they had won the World Series. And so, he kind of razzed me a little bit about being a Mets fan and stuff. But he was super nice, couldn't have been nicer to a young kid going and getting his first autograph from a major league player. But my dad was there for that one. And then he was there for most of the other ones too, over the years. One of the big ones was, went to a card show, and both Hank Aaron and Willie Mays were there autographing. But I couldn't afford to get both of their autographs, so I had to pick one. So I can't remember if I already had the card or if I bought the card there and then got it autographed. But I ended up picking Willie Mays, and I think it was because he was just a little bit older than Hank Aaron. And of course, my dad, talked them both up. They were, all-time greats, obviously. But I got the '69 Topps Willie Mays autograph by Mr. Mays there at that same Marriott Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, when I was a kid. Still have it ungraded. And of course, Willie Mays passed away just a couple months ago. So this is really special. And again, Dad taking me to a card show to get some cards and get some autographs. He was also with me when I went to a local card shop up in Wisconsin. I think it was Kenosha, or somewhere around there, because my dad had some of his business locations all around the country. He raced greyhounds, and so he had a kennel up at the new Wisconsin tracks there when they first opened. And we were up there, the whole family, my mom, dad, my brother, and him were up there getting that kennel set up and everything. And talked him into taking me to a local card shop. And I was looking around the vintage cards, but I still didn't know very much about the players and that kind of stuff. And my dad started looking over the cards, and he said basically something like, "Hey, Richie Ashburn's pretty good, and I really liked the card." So I bought this 1952 Topps Richie Ashburn at that card shop. And then several years later, Richie Ashburn was playing in the FedEx St. Jude Classic Celebrity Pro-Am in Memphis not at Colonial, but at Southwind Country Club. And I knew he was coming. They have all the celebrities listed in the program and stuff, so I knew he was coming beforehand. So I brought this card with me, wanting to get it autographed. And I go, and he's supposed to be playing through the hole that I'm waiting at, and I don't see him. And I'm waiting, and I missed him or something. Turns out he was riding a golf cart rather than walking the course himself. And so I finally realized that he's on a golf cart going in between the holes. And so I catch him off the backside of one hole on his way going to the tee for the next hole, and go up to him and ask him, "Are you Richie Ashburn?" Because of course he's older and doesn't look exactly like he does on the card. And he said yes. And I said, "Well, will you autograph that, or autograph this card?" And I handed it to him, and sure enough, he signed it happily. And was kind of shocked that a kid my age had an old card like this of his to get autographed. But anyway, that would have never happened if my dad hadn't taken me to that card shop and guided me to buying this card, and then taken me to the FedEx St. Jude Classic golf tournament, where I got Richie Ashburn to sign it in person. I mentioned that my dad raced greyhounds for a living for over 30 years. And in Memphis, he raced at, the West Memphis track, Southland. And there was on occasion, kind of local celebrities and that kind of stuff that would go to the tracks and whatever. But one of them was a Negro League player that hung out at the track quite a bit. My dad was very personable and would talk to pretty much everyone up in the Kennel Club restaurant area. And this guy would be up there quite a bit. And so he got to know him pretty well. And he actually gave me a custom made kind of plaque, and I'll show that here in a minute, of his career. But he also got a couple of his autographed cards that, again, wouldn't be in my collection if my dad hadn't made the introductions there. But it's Joe Scott, and he played for a bunch of the Negro League teams. Memphis Red Sox, Pittsburgh Crawfords, New York Black Yankees. Also played in the Canadian and Mexican leagues. But I have these 2 autographed cards of his. I also have an autographed baseball that he signed for me up in my baseball display. But he was super nice to me. Great guy. And he was pretty well known around the Memphis area for attending card shows and signing autographs and that kind of stuff. But again, part of my collection that is entirely due to my dad. I mentioned the custom kind of piece that Joe Scott had given me. And so this is it. And you can see up there, it was a little note from him, some photocopies of some of his accolades and heyday things. He did bat against Bob Feller in a game, and so he was super excited about that. Being able to say he played against one of the great pitchers of all time. You can see down there, career from 1936 to 56, New York Black Yankees, Pittsburgh Crawfords, Satchel Paige All-Stars, Dizzy Dean All-Stars, the Kitty Hawks, Hot Springs Bathers, Knoxville Smokies. So that was really nice for him to make this just for me. So I'll always have that in my collection. Okay, continuing on with the theme of autographs, one of my dad's business associates, I guess, raised greyhounds that we would race, lived in Waco, Texas, or near there at least. And so he was visiting us one day, stayed at our house overnight, spent the night, and we were talking, and I was showing him all my baseball cards and that kind of stuff, and he remembered that there was a Major League player that lived near him, and he couldn't quite remember his name. And so I got out my cards, I started flipping through them, and he was looking at them with me, and he recognized the name. And I said, well, can I get his autograph? And so he took two of my cards with him, took them back home with him, met up with a guy somewhere, and had him autograph them for me and sent them back. And so that was Pat Zachary. So these are 85 Fleer and 85 Tops. So from my very first year of collecting cards, these are ones I pulled out of packs myself, and then subsequently loaned them to my dad's business associate, who took them back home with him to Texas and had Pat Zachary autograph them. I think Pat Zachary has passed away since then. But again, wouldn't have these at all if it wasn't, that connection through my dad. So that's kind of neat. So as I mentioned, Dad was the one who pretty much always took me to the baseball card shows that I wanted to go to as I was growing up. And we'd go and I'd get an autograph. Usually at least one player, sometimes more, but sometimes I had to pick and choose which ones I would get autographs for or from, because I didn't have enough money to get everyone. So I remember one time going and Ernie Banks was signing. So I was there waiting to get Ernie Banks' autograph on a baseball, and this was at East High School in Memphis. And so Ernie Banks comes up on the stage where all the autograph guests are kind of lined up and signing up there. And before he goes to sit down and start signing autographs, he gets up there on the microphone and starts talking to the audience and getting everyone kind of amped up and stuff, and talking to the audience about the importance of exercise and everything, and then he starts getting the whole show floor doing toe touches and jumping jacks and that kind of stuff. So my dad's sitting there listening to him and egging me on, and got me to start doing the jumping jacks and toe touches with all the other kids at the show there. And it was just super great experience. Won't ever forget that. And so because of that, that's one of the big reasons why I'm targeting Ernie Banks 54 Topps rookie card as one of my next big purchases. So hopefully I'll get that here in the next year. But there's lots of other autograph kind of stories like that. I remember going to a show, and I think there was Mickey Mantle and some other players there, and Mickey Mantle was wanting $35 for his autograph, and I didn't bring a whole lot more than that to the show, maybe $50, and I figured, well, if I have to pay $35 to get Mickey Mantle's autograph, and then maybe like $6 or $7 for the ball, that wouldn't leave me very much at all to go buy cards and stuff. And so I didn't get his autograph, and that's probably one of the biggest regrets of my childhood collecting days, is not getting Mantle's autograph. Someday I'll buy an autograph card or autograph ball, but I really kicked myself not getting his autograph back then. And I kind of realized that was a kind of a screw up on my part. So sometime after that, Ted Williams is signing autographs and also asking for $35 an autograph, and I gladly paid up to get Ted Williams' autograph. And so I remember him coming in the show and going up through the line and stuff and getting his autograph. Sorry guys, my cell phone memory storage got full, and so it cut that last video clip off prematurely. So I'm back now. But as I was saying, my dad would take me to pretty much all the card shows and local card shops that I went to as a kid. So he was there with me most of the time. And getting autographs, he would be the one to tell me about the old-time players there and kind of guide me in getting autographs and stuff. So players like Aparicio, Lou Boudreau, Dave Boufaris, Whitey Ford, Eddie Matthews, Joe Pepitone, Bobby Richardson, all those guys. He kind of told me a little bit about them, and I ended up getting their autographs, usually on baseballs, but sometimes photos or cards. And a lot of times, my dad was just as excited to kind of see and interact with the players going through the autograph line as I was. He was super excited to when I got Ted Williams' autograph, Whitey Ford's autograph. Those guys were, players that he watched and he knew from his days as a kid. And so he was always kind of got a big kick out of seeing him and talking to him for a minute while I was up there getting my autograph. So that's kind of that. The next thing that he got me into was set building. Vintage set building at least. And so I'll get into that next. So going into how my dad impacted my vintage set building, I was at the card show either to get this Lou Brock card signed or Willie Mays card signed at the Marriott there in Memphis, where they had some small card shows back in the mid to late 80s. And I remember standing in line, I think waiting to go through the autograph line, and my dad kind of wandered off and was looking around the show and stuff. And he comes back a little while later, and he has this brick of cards wrapped in saran wrap. And he hands them to me, and it had a kind of a sticky note or something on the top that said 100 1965 Topps cards for $10. And so he had went and bought this brick of cards and gave them to me. And so that kind of started my vintage set building collecting habit, I guess. Later on, I got this Mickey Mantle 65 Topps card, of course. That was the first Hall of Famer I got from the set. So I started off getting the most expensive card in the set before I even started building the set, really. I had the 100 Topps, or 100 cards of commons, and then that Mickey Mantle, and then I kind of went from there. And so those cards that he got me were fair, good, maybe at best very good condition. And I don't know exactly which ones they were. I can't remember for sure, but they were cards similar to this, and some of these may actually have been some of those from that stack. These are from my dupes box, but nothing high grade or anything, of course. But for me, as a young kid, getting a stack of 100 1965 Topps cards, I thought that was just awesome. And so, I put those in a binder, and that was the start of my 1965 Topps set. And over time, I would pick up some more card shows and on occasion trade some through some of the online trading groups that I'm a member of. Bought some off of eBay. Just various sources, and upgraded the lower grade ones that I had with higher grade ones, and also filled in all the holes. But that was kind of the first vintage card set that I really started. And I'm getting pretty close here. I'm hoping to finish the set now by the end of this year, 2024. I have it pretty much all here in the binder other than the Hall of Famers. But you can see now I've tried to upgrade the set to excellent mint or better condition. All raw cards, nothing graded. Lately I've been doing some upgrades on some of the off-center ones that I had. But I'm down to needing just 5 cards. The Willie Mays, Pete Rose, the Steve Carlton rookie, the Tony Perez rookie, and Sandy Koufax, I believe. And there's still a few on my upgrade list that I'll, as I look and find some that are in nice condition, I'll probably upgrade a little bit. But I'm hoping to fill in all the holes by the end of the year. So the next Nashville National show, that's going to be probably my focus, is trying to find those 5 cards to finish that set out. So, but anyway, that set was totally started because my dad bought me those original 100 low-grade 1965 Topps cards at one of the card shows he took me to get an autograph, and then kind of spurred on by me buying the 1965 Topps Mickey Mantle there you see when I was a kid. And the reason I picked that is because I had these 100 low-grade 1965 Topps cards. I liked the design of the card set. So when I was there looking for Mantles, that one jumped out at me because it matched those 100 other cards that my dad had gotten me. So that was a real big impact. And of course this snowballed into starting a whole bunch of other 1950s, 60s, and 70s sets, which I'm mostly still working on. So it's been, 30 years, 40 years since that time, and building vintage sets basically because my dad got me started in it by buying those cards. So there's that. And then, after I was older, I was working on these sets. On occasion, I'd bring them over to my parents' house and give my dad a binder cards to flip through. And so he'd flip through them and kind of reminisce about players he remembered and some of the, the games and that kind of stuff that he remembered watching, and some of the plays and that kind of stuff. So I just remember him, always being willing to look through the cards and kind of, enjoying flipping through there and remembering, probably his childhood, although he was probably a little bit old for 1965 Topps cards. But, I'd show him some of the early 50s, mid-50s cards that I would have too. And those definitely brought back good memories because that was the time when he was collecting. And so, just another kind of good memory I have of sharing the hobby and cards with my dad, up until, shortly before he passed. So that kind of brings me to the end of the video. I appreciate y'all for sticking around this long if you have. And, last thing I wanted to kind of share or say is that for all you YouTubers out there that still have your dads around and you're collecting with them, going to card shows with them, I saw, a lot of videos on content creators going to the National or to this show or that show and taking their fathers and sometimes their brothers and fathers to the show with them. Just really cherish that time with them, because it means a lot. Honestly, I'm a little bit jealous of folks that are still in that position. So just make sure you're thankful for that time with your dad in the hobby. It's leads to some really great memories, obviously, and you guys know that. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure I got that out there. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the dads out there who got their kids into card collecting, and especially if they're still active in it with their kids. That means a lot. I'm sure to a lot of YouTubers and commenters and stuff that are out there in the hobby. So again, appreciate that. And to Dad, miss you. Love you always. Thanks, everyone.